What is up, everybody? We're back. Corey Hughes' Bloody History. I hope everybody has been enjoying the content lately. This has been some of the most in-depth analysis that you'll find of, well, anything Kennedy related, but really in particular, Oswald's activities down in Mexico City that we've been on for like over 2 months at this point. So, looks like the stream is up and running. That's good. All right, so here we go. We're going to start talking about Sylvia Duran, and there's a lot about Sylvia Duran that we haven't covered. We've never covered anything really about her, and my exposure to Sylvia Duran is limited. And so she was arrested the day of the assassination from working at the embassy the Cuban embassy down in Mexico City. And ultimately, I believe, and this is my assumption, is that she was arrested because of statements made by a woman named Elena Guerrero de Paz, who had claimed that she saw Sylvia and Roberto Duran hosting a party that had Oswald at, and allegedly Sylvia Duran was sleeping with Oswald. But we know Oswald never went to Mexico City, right? It was Carrie Thornley the entire time in Mexico City. So let us begin. Oswald's visits to Cuban and Soviet diplomatic establishments, investigation by Mexican authorities. This is all in the FBI files, and it's documented as Commission's Exhibit number 2121. A signed statement which had been made by Sylvia Duran to the Federal Security Police on November 23rd, 63, as translates from Spanish, is recorded hereunder. At the City of Mexico Federal District at 6 o'clock p.m. of November 23rd, 63, the undersigned, Captain Fernando Gutierrez Barrios, Assistant Director of the Federal Security Police, proceeding legally with witnesses present, makes record that with the presentation in this office of Mrs. Sylvia Tirado Duran for the purpose of being interrogated concerning the matters which are herein set forth, this document was prepared. Quote, promptly upon presentation of the person who under normal conditions is called Sylvia Tirado Duran, having been warned to tell the truth and advised of the penalties which are incurred by those who furnish false testimony, described herself as follows: that her name is as recorded, 25 years of age, married, without religious preference, an employee, literate, a native and resident of this city, with domicile at Constituyentes, number 143, apartment number 3. With respect to the matters under investigation, declares that she had been legally married to Mr. Horatio Duran Navarro since November 5th, 1958, and is the mother of a child named Patricia, who at the present time is 3 1/2 years of age. That in the month of July or August of 1961, the deponent was invited to join the Mexican-Cuban Institute of Cultural Relations, which at that time was directed by attorney Augustin Q. Canavas as a coordinator, and although she does not recall specifically who it was that recommended her, she can clarify that for some time previously she was friendly and visited with frequency the employees of the Cuban embassy, being a personal friend of Ambassador Portuondo, as well as the cultural attachés Teresa Proenza and Luis Alvaro, as well as with the female employees, but principally with the Secretary of Consul Eusebio Askew, Miss Mara Carmen Olivari, of Spanish nationality, but a relative of Askew. That at the Institute, the activities were exclusively of a cultural nature and were attended on occasion by the aforementioned cultural attachés and some Cubans, but in a greater number by Mexicans, always artists and intellectuals without any political discussions, although she recalls that at the time of the October Cuban crisis, in connection with the threatened invasion of Cuba and the subsequent blockade of the island by the North American government, they listened by shortwave radio to the news of the Prensa Latina, the Latin press, on the basis of which they made up a bulletin which was read of the news that they had listened directly from Havana, agreeing also to the effect that Cubans and Mexicans attending said meetings discussed the political problem of Cuba on a private basis without doing so in any official character, that the declarant was receiving a salary of 500 pesos, $40 U.S. monthly, in her capacity as coordinator at the Institute, with her work schedule being from 4 to 8 p.m. daily, and the money for the maintenance of the Institute itself coming from a monthly subsidy from the Cuban embassy, the amount of which she is not aware, but also with each one of the members paying a quota, and also contributions were received from persons whose names she does not recall, because usually they were made anonymously, being unable to fix the monthly receipts, although she was the person who personally received all of the funds received at the Institute. In that addition to the speaker, only Mr. Felipe Rojas, who worked as a secretary at the Institute during the mornings, received any of the monthly salary in the same amount of 500 pesos, with the remainder of the money which was received being used for the payment of rent and other expenses connected with its operation. That in the month of December of 1961, the declarant and her husband made a trip by air to Havana, Cuba, paying for their own transportation. But all of their expenses of their visit to the city and the greater number of the cities of the island being paid by the Cuban Institute of Friendship. That screams of a front organization, with the people in the House of Culture, so-called of the Americas. The trip having lasted 15 days without there having any contact or connection during this trip with officials of the Cuban government. That, as the speaker has already stated, she has been a sympathizer of socialism and Marxist doctrine for several years, having studied philosophy and existentialism, and particularly she has sympathized since its inception and sympathizes with the Cuban Revolution. That approximately 3 months ago, she began to occupy the position of secretary to the Cuban consul in this city, Mr. Eusebio Azcue, who ceased to function in that capacity some 5 days ago on Monday the 18th of this month, having been substituted by Mr. Alfredo Miraval y Diaz, clarifying at this time that from the beginning she began to work in the capacity as a temporary measure as a result of the death in a traffic accident of her friend, Mara Carmen Olavari, who had been occupying that position until some person should arrive from Cuba who would assume the same, having had under her responsibility the administrative operation and preparing the visas which are issued, as well as handling the applications for such visas, which are invariably sent to the Ministry of Foreign Relations, Government of Cuba, for its approval, having obtained this position directly from former Consul Askew, with whom she is very friendly, and for whom the speaker even organized a farewell party in her home, which was attended by almost all of the officials and employees of the embassy and consulate except the ambassador. Whoever fucking wrote this needs to work on their English and their run-on sentences. That the speaker does not belong to any political party and never has attended manifestations of meetings, nor has she given lectures or speeches, which her husband has done since he has written several articles for the newspaper El Dia, The Day, pro-communist Spanish-language newspaper published in Mexico City. That she has never been arrested for any reason, nor even on the occasion of the visit to Mexico of Mr. John F. Kennedy, which caused her a great deal of personal satisfaction because of the benefits which it would represent to the country. That yesterday, while she was working at the Cuban consulate, where she is employed from 10 to 2 and from 4 to 6 daily, and where she receives a salary of 1,500 pesos, $120 US monthly, just before their time of departure at noon, a friend commented to her that she had been listening to the radio and heard the news to the effect that the President Kennedy had suffered an attack in which they had fired 3 shots at him. As a result, this is the fucked up thing about the 3 shots. If you're familiar with my work at all, you know that they only found 2 shells underneath the fucking window. So I don't know what 3 fucking shots they're talking about. As a result of which, she called her husband on the telephone and they discussed the news, and he advised her that he already knew about it and referred to said attack as monstrous, and they agreed upon meeting at their home they would discuss the matter, which they did before their dinner hour, but in a very brief manner, since they did not know all the circumstances of the attack and the name and description of the presumed author of the same. It's having been only that night that they read in the extra edition the news relating thereto, and subsequently on the radio at her residence she heard the name of Lee Harvey Oswald, which caused her to remember that this name refers to a North American who in the last days of September, or the first days of the month of October of the present year, appeared at the Cuban consulate and applied for a visa to Cuba in transit to Russia, and based his application on his presentation of his passport, in which it was recorded that he'd been living in the latter country for a period of 3 years. His work permit from that same country written in the Russian language and letters in the same language, as well as proof of his being married to a woman of Russian nationality and being the apparent director in the city of New Orleans of the organization called Fair Play for Cuba, with the desire that he should be accepted as a friend of the Cuban Revolution. As a result of which, the speaker, in compliance with her duties, received all of his data and filled out the appropriate application, and he left to return in the afternoon. this time with his photographs, and the speaker, recognizing that she exceeded her duties, semi-officially called the Russian consulate by telephone because of her interest in facilitating the handling of the Russian visa for Lee Harvey Oswald. But from there, they answered her that the operation would require approximately 4 months, which annoyed the applicant since, as he affirmed, he was in a great hurry to obtain the visa, which would permit him to travel to Russia, insisting that he was entitled to them because of his background and his partisanship and personal activities in favor of the Cuban government. The declarant not being able to specify because she does not remember whether or not he said that he was a member of the Communist Party, but that his wife of Russian nationality was at the time in the city of New York, from where she would follow him, although his place of origin was the aforementioned city of New Orleans. That as soon as Oswald understood that it was not possible... Hang on one second. It just took me about 30 seconds to catch something. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so here we have a fucking problem. Another indication that this is not Oswald. So it says here, in favor of the Cuban movement, the declarant's not being able to specify because she does not remember whether or not he said that he was a member of the Communist Party, but that his wife of Russian nationality was at the time in the city of New York. Okay? Why the fuck would anybody say that? She's not in New York. She's in Dallas. What date is this? September 27th. September 27th. She's in fucking Dallas. She ain't in fucking New York. Why is New York brought into this at all? Even Kerry Thornley wouldn't be so fucking stupid as to say New York. Well, let me rephrase that. Of course Kerry Thornley would be so fucking stupid as to say New York, because he's a fucking dumb shit. Like, literally, and I've said this before, if they were to ever build a Mount Rushmore of stupid, it would have one face on it, in the face of Kerry Thornley. Possibly the dumbest fucking government employee that's ever existed in the history of mankind. We'll go into Kerry Thornley another time. Actually, I've covered Kerry Thornley on at least 20 episodes, so we'll cover him again in the future. But no, she's not in fucking New York. She's in Dallas, and she is going to momentarily meet Kerry Thornley just over the border of Nuevo Laredo, whatever that fucking leads to, in Texas. And from there, they're going to travel to Alice, Texas on October the 3rd. So, I don't know why the fuck it says New York here. Period. That's just so random. That as soon as Oswald understood that it was not possible to give him a Cuban visa without his previously obtaining a Russian one because the former was for transit, he became highly agitated and angry. As a result of the speaker calling Consul Askew, who at the time was in his private office in company of his ultimate replacement, Mirakova, I can't read that last name, but came out and began to argue in English with Oswald in a very angry manner. And Askew concluded by saying to him that, as far as he was concerned, he would not give him a visa, and that a person like him, in place of aiding the Cuban Revolution, was doing it harm. It's being noted that in their discussion, they had been referring to the Russian Socialist Revolution and not the Cuban. It's being stated by Oswald that he had two reasons to request the visa with urgency, which were, one, that his permit to be in Mexico was expiring, and the other, that he had urgent necessity of reaching Russia. That in spite of the argument, the speaker handed to Oswald a piece of paper similar to that which she writes at this time, in which she recorded her name, Sylvia Duran, and the telephone number of the consulate, which is 112047. And at any rate, she initiated the handling of his visa application by sending it to the Cuban Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from which a reply was received in the normal manner some 15 to 30 days later, approving the issuance of a visa, but conditioning it on his previously obtaining the Russian one. Although she does not recall whether Oswald subsequently called her or not on the telephone for the consulate which she had given him, all of the conversation which the speaker had with Oswald, as well as that of Consul Askew with him, was in the English language, since he did not speak any Spanish. And that upon seeing his photograph, which appears in today's newspapers, specifically in the newspaper El Dia, she immediately recognized and identified it as being the same person that she has been referring to as Lee Harvey Oswald. But we know that can't be possible because Oswald was still in New Orleans on the day that this Oswald, Kerry Thornley, passed the border into Mexico. That on only one occasion, the declarant attended a reception ceremony at the Russian embassy, which was given on the occasion of the visit of the astronauts Gagarin and Tereshkova on the personal invitation which the speaker received from the Russian consul Yaksov when the latter visited Askew and Miraval and delivered to them their respective invitations at the Cuban consulate. That with respect to something in-laws, Lydia and Ruben Duran Navarro, the former on various occasions attended with the declarant the meetings which were being held at the Institute, whereas the latter only did so on 1 to 2 occasions in connection with exhibits and paintings with respect to Betty Serrato Azakar, the wife of Rubin. She always remained aloof from these activities, although all of them are of leftist ideology, but do not actively participate in any activities that Barbara Ann Blitz, Tresmond Escoval, and Agata Rosen Garcia Arc, friends of Betty and the speaker, has known them very little and superficially. As a result, God, these are the worst run-on sentences ever. As a result of which she knows nothing about their activities and ideologies, and in connection with the gentleman who she now knows is named Bentley, she never had seen him before and supposes that he is a friend of Barbara. Goddamn, since she noticed that he was talking to Barbara when they were dining at the home of the deponent, being present her husband. Goddamn, this is all one sentence. Agata and Lydia, whereas the others were at the home of her brother-in-law Ruben. Holy fuck. I swear to God, this has got to be a Spanish person trying to translate this into English thinking they're doing a good job. Fucking hilarious. That she has nothing further to declare after reading the above, she ratifies and signs the margins in evidence thereof. The above document is closed, authorized, and witnessed. So, to the audience, why is this shit important at all? Okay, so if you're not familiar with the backstory, Oswald allegedly goes to New Orleans, or from New Orleans to Mexico City. But the problem is, all this happened on September 26th and 27th, right? So Oswald's allegedly on a bus with a CIA agent named fucking Albert Osborne, which we covered yesterday. And he gets off the bus in fucking Mexico City on the 27th, 10 o'clock in the morning at the hotel, right? And so you have the 26th and the 27th that Oswald could not have been anywhere but Mexico City, right? Well, wrong, because on the 27th, we have the Sylvia Odio incident in Dallas, which was William Seymour and Lawrence Howard and Lauren Hall, but it's attributed to Oswald. And then we have hidden deep in the Harold Weisberg archive, I stumbled across 2 Jim Garrison documents that shouldn't have been there. They should have been in Garrison's fucking files, but they weren't. They were in Harold Weisberg's files. And they clearly indicated Oswald was still in New Orleans on the 26th of September, where he closed out his P.O. box and presumably somehow made it to Dallas on the 27th, right? Which all precludes him from having been involved in any of the other incidents, right? So we have 3 different Oswalds all interacting with people in 3 different places all around the same time. And none of those people could have been each other, right? So all the investigation by the FBI and the CIA and all these other fucking cunts who chose not to find anything, it basically revolves around Oswald's appearances at the Cuban and Soviet consulates, which he went 5 times in a matter of like 3 or 4 days. And of course, the CIA doesn't have a single fucking picture of him, like not one. And when you go through all the testimony of the CIA employees at the Mexico City station, what you find is that those motherfuckers went home at 5 o'clock and they stopped recording. Okay? They went home on the weekends. They didn't fucking record on the weekends. I don't believe a word of this, but this is what we're supposed to believe. So that's their excuse for why they never got a picture of Oswald, because he must have been there outside of the range that he should have been there, right? But no, that's not the case at all. He went there on September 27th, and he went there in the morning when they should have had full fucking video, film, and it should have had film, photograph, and audio surveillance on the phones. They got the audio surveillance on the phones, right? But another thing you'll find when you go through these documents, you'll find that he first made a phone call on the 27th from the consulate, and that was recorded. Normally, normally the CIA station had a 2-week hold on audio recordings, but by the very next day, the second time they record Oswald, which is the known recordings of Oswald, that first recording was recorded over. They fucking erased it. Okay, so they tried to cover the tracks, and I bet you they probably attempted to cover their tracks each and every day. All of them had to have been in on the fact that it was Kerry Thornley down there posing as Oswald. They had to, because if not, then the fucking dozen or so people they had working at this Mexico City station for the CIA are undoubtedly the most fucking dumb and incompetent people that have ever existed in the intelligence community. But they consist of people like Wynn Scott and Alan B. White and Robert T. Shaw and Annie Goodpasture and fucking, I mean, the whole crew down there. right? And these are not incompetent people. These are some of the best people the CIA really ever fucking produced. These are amazing fucking spooks. And so the idea that they were to just miss Oswald 5 times is a fucking joke, right? So that's why all this shit's important. And the stories of Sylvia Duran are connected because she allegedly was at a party where she was fucking Oswald, right? It's nonsensical story by Elena Guerra de Paz. So, which we've already covered all her testimony. You can go through my podcast and you can hear all that stuff. Where the fuck was I in this thing? All right, let me move to the next page. Other inquiries by Mexican Federal Security Police on November 29th, 63, T17. That's an informant number. Obtained a copy of report dated November 25th, 1963. Recording the results of investigation by agents of the Mexican Federal Security Police, Dirección Federal de Investigación, DFS. Translation from Spanish of that report follows here and under. In connection with the assassination of the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, it was reported that Lee Harvey Oswald had previously been in Mexico as a consequence of which appropriate investigation was conducted, the results of which are as follows. 1. Lee Harvey Oswald was in Mexico, having entered at Nuevo Laredo on September 26th last as a tourist, proceeding from New Orleans and departing at the same place on the last October 3rd. 2, it was confirmed that he had come to Mexico to apply for a visa at the Cuban embassy for transit en route to Moscow. 3, toward this objective, he established contact with Sylvia Tirado de Duran, a Mexican Sylvia Duran, whom he interviewed on 2 occasions since she is an employee of the consulate, responsible for making the arrangements necessary for this type of visa and completing the cards with data concerning the applicant, an indispensable requisite for obtaining a Cuban visa. 4, through her, he made contact with the Russian consulate for the same purpose. Quote, when it was learned that the above-mentioned Sylvia Duran had been one of the contacts made by Lee Harvey Oswald in Mexico, said lady and her husband were arrested in order that they might be interrogated, advising in their statements as follows. Interview of Horatio Duran, I can't read his last name, is a little blurred, American by birth, son of Mexican by birth, son of a Chilean something, and Mexican mother. He said that his occupation, that of industrial designer, holding a something position on the subject in the National School of Plastic Arts. That sounds weird. A dependency of the UNAN, a university, blah, 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 of Mexico. He receives 1,400 pesos monthly. 40 years ago, married without religious preference, domiciled at Constituyentes Street, number 3 in this city, that the first 8 years of his life were spent in Los Angeles, California, and subsequently he came to this capital with his parents, Rufino Duran and Lydia Navarro de Duran, and later they went to Santiago, Chile, that should be Chile, to live. I can't read that fucking word. There was a period of a year and a half later returning with his brother Ruben to Mexico, being followed later by his sister Lydia and his mother, that he entered the National Agricultural School at Chapinga, where he studied for 5 years as a career as an agronomist. And as he learned drawing in the San Carlos Academy, he chose to continue studying that art, which served him as a basis for specializing in industrial design, which he now follows, being a teacher in that subject in the School of Fine Arts. This is all one sentence, by the way, still. Spending his free time in private work as a designer, for which he receives an income of approximately 5,000 pesos monthly. That in 1950, he was married to a French woman, Lucille Desjardins. Desjardins, who at the present time is 10 years... married to a French woman, Lucille Desjardins, whom he fathered a son with, named Paul Duran Desjardins, who at the present time is 10 years of age. And with that marriage having lasted more or less 6 years, and with the breaking up of that matrimony on November 5th, 1958, he entered into a new marriage contract with his present wife, Sylvia Tirado de Duran, with whom he fathered a girl named Patricia, now 3.5 years of age. That when he became acquainted with his present wife, she was working as a secretary in the Prodeo Gallery, and later she and other persons, among them Professor Augustine Q. Canavas, the cultural attaché of the Cuban embassy, and others, began to organize the Mexican-Cuban Institute of Cultural Relations. Jose Marti, in which she served as a coordinator, and for about the last 4 months she'd been employed as a secretary in the Consulate General of Cuba in this city, first having worked with the consul Eusebio Azcu, and now with Mirabal receiving a monthly salary of 1,500 pesos. He acknowledged that his ideology is leftist and in sympathy with the Cuban Revolution, adding that this is the reason why he permits his wife to work and engage in her present activities. He stated that when he discussed with his wife the assassination of President Kennedy, having heard the name of the presumed perpetrator, Lee Harvey Oswald, she immediately told him that she believed that he was the same individual who in the latter part of September or early October had been in the Cuban consulate applying for Cuban visa in transit to Russia, that she had attended him herself and handled his visa application papers, but when she notified him that he would first need a Russian visa and that his application would have to be sent to the Cuban Ministry of Foreign Relations, which of course would require several days, Oswald became angry and lost his self-control, as a result of which Sylvia called Consul Azcu, with whom the applicant had a violent argument. He added that he had not seen nor had he personally known Lee Harvey Oswald, and in December of 61, Duran made a trip to Cuba accompanied by his wife, paying for their tickets himself. So one thing we need to really address here is the behavior of this person who's saying they're Oswald, right? So based on the chronologies and the time frames and the travels, we know it's Kerry Thornley, right? We know Kerry Thornley spoke a little bit of Spanish, but not a whole lot. And, he spoke broken Russian and definitely didn't speak fluent Russian, as is evident on the audio tape. But he is an asshole. Kerry Thornley's a fucking dick, right? He's a total asshole, and he gets angry, and that's his whole thing. He's a fucking asshole. Not Oswald. Oswald might be an asshole, but he was very reserved. He was very calm. He was always clean cut, not dirty, right? Clean fingernails and trimmed hair and clean shaven every fucking day. Okay. He was very much, I don't even know what word to use. He was very, refined, I'd say. He's a lot more refined than Kerry Thornley. Okay. The whole point of this thing was to make a scene, right? This is why he gets angry. This is why he pitches a fit. He fucking knows this. He knows he's not getting a visa. He's never intending to get the visa. He's going there to pitch a scene, going back and forth, making sure that everybody fucking remembers him. So after the president gets killed, every single goddamn person he interacted with was like, holy shit, that's that one lunatic who was here like a month ago, right? That's exactly what they did. And then you have to remember, like, when they see the pictures of Oswald, the grainy black and white photos in the newspaper, and then they see this person in person, they don't remember exactly, right? If you met somebody today and you went to a store and you interacted with somebody for about 10 seconds, and then 2 months later, you saw a story on the news where this person who looked kind of familiar and the story matched what they had told you in the store, but they had ended up killing somebody, you'd be like, holy shit, that's that guy. But it's not that guy. And they knew that this would work that way. They knew that the duplicate Oswald would be reported as Oswald, because, right, like the best example is Miss McGee in Baton Rouge, where she puts an ad out for her fucking apartment. Kerry Thornley shows up with Marina Oswald and her kid, and then he starts talking about everything fucking communism, shooting guns, the Fair Play for Cuba committee, the whole 9 yards, right? But we know it's not Oswald, because Oswald doesn't fucking drive, and he doesn't have shaggy beard, and he doesn't have any fucking dirty fingernails, right? So very easy to put Kerry Thornley in that situation, but that becomes the pattern everywhere. And so here in Mexico City, the whole fucking point of this was to draw attention to the fact that Oswald was trying to get back to the Soviet Union. That's it. That's all it had to do. Show that he was making plans to get to the Soviet Union. That was all that really needed to happen. Remember, these are staged events in a long series of staged events. It's what I consider to be a historical theatrical production, right? Whereas a theatrical production would be practiced, rehearsed, and then performed for entertainment. This thing was put together, and there was no dress rehearsal. You had to do it right the first time, right? Every single incident that they staged, they had to get right the first time. And they didn't get any of them right. There was slop around each fucking one, especially Book Depository, especially J.D. Tippett. These fucking things are so goddamn obvious what happens when you really finally see the big picture. All right, let me continue. It is pointed out that at the home where the Duran couple was detained for Herodoto number 14, apartment A, the home of the brother-in-law of Sylvia Duran named Ruben Duran Navarro, the persons who were visiting at the residence were arrested and their background data is recorded below. None of the individuals listed below as having been interviewed admitted knowing Oswald or having any information concerning him. Therefore, the date concerning them is being summarized rather than recorded in full. The data, I should say. Ruben Duran Navarro advised that he was born in Los Angeles, California, is married to Betty Serratos, and is 38 years of age, a decorator by profession, and has applied for Mexican citizenship. He related that Calle Herodoto number 14, apartment A, is his residence. Betty Serratos de Duran related that she was born in the Republic of Honduras and has resided in Mexico for the past 10 years. Is 33 years of age and has never belonged to any political party or entertained leftist ideas. She explained that she resides with her husband, Ruben Duran Navarro, at Herodoto number 14, apartment A. Lydia Duran Navarro, VDA, widow, de Flores, advised that she's 35 years of age, having been born in Chihuahua. Is that a place? Chihuahua? That she resides at Luz Snavinos Street, number 1211, apartment 2, and is employed by the Tourism Department and Mexican Sports Federation. She denied having political affiliations or sympathies. She explained that she is the sister of Ruben Duran Navarro and had been visiting them at the time the investigators arrived at their apartment. Agata Rosena Garcia related that she was born in the capital of Mexico, resides at Rivera Street, number 63, Colonia Las Aguilas. She denied having any political affiliations or being of leftist ideology and explained that she's a friend of the Durans and visits them frequently at their home. Barbara Ann Bliss stated that she was in Mexico as a tourist and has been living in the country for the past 8 years and resides at Bahia de Magdalcan, number 25, that she is divorced from Juan Esquivel, a Costa Rican citizen who presently lives in the United States and has a monthly income of $800 per month from the estate of her father, which is administered by a firm in Washington, D.C. She explained that her father, Alonzo Bliss, formerly owned a sugar plantation on Trinidad, but presently resides at 2585 Bayshore Drive, Coconut Grove, Miami. She explained that she has become acquaintances with Betty Serratos some 3 months earlier at the apartment of Carmen Pino, and they exchanged visits with each other thereafter because of their mutual liking for recorded music. She also stated that she had met Sylvia Tirado de Duran at a concert, but had no friendship with her. Charles E. Bentley explained that he's 27 years of age and was in Mexico as a tourist, having resided for the previous 3 months at Palermo Street, number 9, Colonia Hippodroma in Mexico City, that he'd been trying to obtain employment as a salesman for the Sonora Cattle Company, that he had served in the United States Marine Corps from 54 to 57, had no political affiliations or leftist ideas, and he explained that he had met Barbara Ann Bliss and Betty Serratos some 2 months earlier and was visiting at Herodoto number 14-7 because of his friendships with them. All right, looks like we're now getting into the hotel accommodations of Lee Harvey Oswald in Mexico City. On November 26, 63, T14, a confidential source that followed, who has furnished reliable information in the past, advised that following a check of the registration records of numerous middle and lower class hotels in the downtown area of Mexico City, he'd ascertained that on September 27, 63, Lee Harvey Oswald had registered at the Hotel de Comercio located at Calle Bernardino de Sahagún, number 19, and approximately 8 blocks from the commercial heart of the Mexican capital. The records disclosed that Oswald was registered as the occupant of room number 18 until October 1st, 1963, and was deleted from the hotel guest list on October 2nd, 1963. According to source, there were only 3 employees at the hotel, and some of them were able to recognize Oswald's photograph as having been a guest at that establishment, but could recall virtually no information concerning the circumstances relating thereto. Oswald's registration at the hotel, T1 made available photocopies of the registration records of the Hotel del Comercio, Calle Bernardino de Sahagún, number 19, Mexico DF, which reflect that on September 27, 63, Oswald registered at the Hotel Lee Harvey Oswald, USA, Texas photo, U.S. citizen, was assigned room number 18. The owner and manager of the hotel, Guillermo Garcia Luna, explained on March 3rd, 64, that upon arrival, a guest is required to register in his own handwriting. However, as long as he remains at the hotel thereafter, the name is transferred to the registration list for subsequent days by the manager or his assistant. Examination of the handwriting on hotel register by FBI laboratory. On December 11th, 1963, a photocopy of the above described page of the Hotel del Comercio registration book was submitted to the FBI laboratory for examination of the Lee Harvey Oswald signature appearing therein. That's another thing we need to comment on real quick. The person who wrote the name Lee Harvey Oswald put a comma after the word Lee. Like, who the fuck does that? Somebody who doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. In a laboratory report dated December 18, 1963, the FBI laboratory stated that the examination of QC333 photocopy page of Registry Book of Hotel Commercial Cal Sahagun 19 with signatures of guests registering on September 27, 1963, line 18 bearing signature Lee Harvey Oswald had been made with the following result. It was concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald's signature on line 18 of Q333 was written by Lee Harvey Oswald, whose known writing appears as K4 and K5 in this case. That's bullshit. I think all of the known Lee Harvey Oswald handwritings were done by Kerry Thornley. All of them. It's impossible otherwise. Identities of persons at the hotel during the same time period as Oswald. A review of copies of the pages of the Hotel de Comercio registration book for individuals who registered or roomed in at the hotel from September 26, 1963 through the night of October 1st and 2nd, 1963 revealed the following with respect to their names, city and state of origin, room or rooms occupied, and date or dates of occupancy. Because of the fact that some of the names were abbreviated and others were not decipherable, Hotel de Comercio owner Guillermo Garcia Luna assisted in clarifying those names. I'm just doing a quick scan. These are all Spanish names. Let me see if there's anything that jumps out at me. Nope, not yet. Dun, dun, dun. I'm looking for American names, basically. Leopoldo Diaz. Leopoldo Diaz. That's got to be a real fucking name, because if not, it's a jumble of aliases. Leopoldo Diaz. Lee Harvey Oswald, September 27th to October 1st. But then where did he stay October 2nd? And on the 2nd, he probably got on the bus, right? That would make sense. Alfredo Garcia, Alicia Plaza. No, I'm not seeing any American guests here at all, or even English names. All right. Interview of manager and other personnel at hotel. Guillermo Garcia Luna advised on March 3rd, 1964 that he is the owner and manager of the Hotel de Comercio, which is located approximately 5 blocks north of the main east-west thoroughfare of Mexico City, Paseo de la Reforma, and 2 blocks east of the principal north-south artery, Avenida Insurgentes. He explained that his hotel caters to commercial travelers, most of whom are Mexican citizens, that it has a total of 30 rooms, most of which are equipped with a private bath, that for a single room, the minimum rate without bath is 13 pesos, $1 Jesus Christ, $1 $1 to stay in a hotel. And the maximum with bath is 20 pesos, $1.60. He added that the hotel is in the heart of the area of many of the bus terminals in Mexico City, and also is only a few blocks from the passenger railroad station. Garcia Luna furnished the following observations concerning the stay of Lee Harvey Oswald at the Hotel de Comercio. He received Oswald and caused him to sign the hotel registration book, which is utilized in place of registration cards. He believed Oswald's arrival had occurred between 10 and 11 a.m. The guest makes the initial entry into the registration book with data which includes his name, place of origin, occupation, and nationality. Thereafter, so long as the guest remains at the hotel, his name and identifying data are transferred to the registration book page for their current date after he has made payment in advance for his room for the ensuing night. Inasmuch as payment is made in advance, no effort is made to obtain an exact home address for the registrant. The hotel has 4 floors, and Oswald was assigned room number 18 with bath on the 3rd floor and a daily rate of 16 pesos, $1.28. The rooms on the latter floor are numbered from 18 to 23. The hotel registration book reflects that Oswald paid for his room on October 1st, 1963, which according to Garcia Luna indicates he was entitled to and probably slept at the hotel the night of October 1st and 2nd. I don't know if that's possible if he stayed there the night of the 2nd. I'm confident it's not. He had to have been on the well, not Oswald. Thornley had to have been on the bus the 2nd. I originally thought that he was flown in by David Pierce Magyar, who has a corresponding visa and a friend of David Ferry. But I can't seem to work that into this situation here. So maybe one day. Garcia Luna advised that he speaks a few words of English, and he received the impression that Oswald neither spoke nor understood any Spanish. He had not observed Oswald in the hotel during the day, nor had he ever seen him accompanied by any individual or individuals. He recalled that Oswald had been carrying a medium-sized brown handbag. which he believed had a zipper and was either of naugahyde or canvas material. He did not remember that Oswald had ever worn a coat and believed he usually appeared in a short-sleeved shirt of a knit variety, maybe like a polo shirt. Inquiry was made of Garcia Luna as to other personnel at the hotel who might recall Oswald on the basis of having any reason to notice or contact him, and he stated that those persons would be his assistant, Sebastian Perez, and the maid who cleans the rooms of the upper floors, Matilda Garnisa. Garcia Luna stated that he was acquainted with a few of the guests who were at the hotel during the same period as Oswald, but did not have home addresses for any of them. He mentioned that several of the guests of that period are commercial travelers and return to the hotel from time to time. Matilda Garnisa, maid at the Hotel de Comercio, advised March 3rd, 1964, that she recognized the photos of Oswald as being of the young American who had accompanied room number 18 for almost a week during the latter part of the last year. She explained that she handles the daily housekeeping duties for the third and fourth floors of the hotel, comprising rooms number 18 through 30, and ordinarily arrives at work between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m., leaving at 9 o'clock upon completion of her workday. Mrs. Garnisa related that she clearly recalls Oswald as few Americans stay at the hotel and was somewhat intrigued by his presence there. He had very few personal effects, which he carried in somewhat she described as a small brown zippered handbag, which was either made of canvas or imitation leather material. She did not believe she had seen Oswald in the hotel on more than 2 occasions, the day of his arrival and the following Saturday as he was still in his room when she checked to determine which rooms were available for cleaning. She remembered that when she saw him in the room on the Saturday morning in question, he said good morning to her in English and a short time later left the hotel. She never saw him with any other person and had no conversation with him, having received the impression that he neither spoke nor understood Spanish. Sebastian Perez Hernandez, a desk clerk and assistant to the owner of the Hotel del Comercio, advised on March 10th, 1964, that he had not conversed with Oswald, but remembered him clearly inasmuch as very few Americans have stayed at the hotel. To the best of his recollection, Oswald left the hotel each morning and did not return until evening, possibly after Perez Hernandez had completed his workday and left the hotel. He stated Oswald was alone whenever he noticed him at the hotel and usually wore a knit short-sleeved sport shirt and no coat or jacket. Perez Hernandez advised that since Oswald paid his rent in advance for the night of October 1st, there would have been little reason for contact with him on the presumed date of his departure, October 2nd, and he was unable to remember any details in this connection. On April 18th, 1964, Pedro Rodriguez Ledesma advised that he resides at Santa Clara, State of Mexico, and for many years has been the night watchman at the Hotel del Comercio. His working hours from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. He explained, however, that he often is able to leave the hotel by 8 a.m. or earlier if the owner and manager, Guillermo Garcia Luna, has arrived to relieve him and handle reception duties. With respect to Lee Harvey Oswald's stay at the hotel, he furnished the following information. He clearly recalls the young American whom he later identified in his mind as Oswald and remembers that on the date of the latter's departure from the hotel and on the basis of sign language and the word taxi, which he interpreted to indicate that Oswald wanted a taxi cab, Rodriguez walked around the corner from the Hotel de Comercio to Orozco y Berra and Bernal Diaz streets, where he obtained a taxicab which had just left a passenger at the Estrella Blanca, the White Star bus terminal. He stated definitely that he did know the taxi driver and had not known or discussed with he did not know the taxi driver and had not known or discussed with the driver or Oswald later's intended destination. He said Oswald carried his own luggage downstairs and waited in front of the hotel with the luggage until Rodriguez returned with the taxicab. He believed Oswald left the hotel at 6:30 and 7 a.m. Since it was getting light when he was in search of a taxicab. He would not be more precise concerning the time. He believed that Oswald gave him a small tip of 1 or 2 pesos, 8 or 15 cents for his assistance in calling a taxi. Rodriguez commented that while he had little difficulty obtaining a taxi at the early hour, it becomes very difficult to secure taxi transportation between 7:30 and 8:30 a.m. because of the heavy traffic at the time. Rodriguez related that, to the best of his recollection, Oswald always arrived at the hotel late night, midnight or thereafter. What was he doing all day? But he never noticed any indication that Oswald had been drinking. He never observed Oswald in the company of any person, did not recall his ever using the telephone at the hotel, which is located at the reception desk. other inquiries in the area of the Hotel de Comercio taxi stands and bus terminals. On March 4th and again on April 10th, 64, Dolores Ramirez de Barrero advised that she is the owner, manager, and sometimes cook at a small restaurant on Calle Bernardino de Sahagún, no number, immediately adjacent to the Hotel de Comercio. She explained that there is no commercial connection between the hotel and her restaurant, but because of its proximity, many hotel guests eat some meals in the restaurant. Upon viewing photographs of Oswald, Mrs. Barrero affirmed that she remembered him as a young American who had eaten several meals at the restaurant in the late afternoon over a period of approximately 1 week. She said he appeared at the restaurant after the noon rush hour or some time after 2 p.m., always alone, and ordered his food by pointing on the menu. Apparently, with some consideration of costs, he always ate the soup of the day, rice, and either meat or eggs, but always rejected dessert and coffee. She thought this unusual, as the dessert and coffee ordinarily are included in the price of the daily lunch, but he did not appear to understand this and always waved the waitress away as if she tried to serve those items. She recalled that he also rejected any efforts to sell him soft drinks, which she described as an important item in her business. She estimated that Oswald spent from 5 to 6 pesos, 40 to 48 US cents for his meals. She had assumed he was a guest at the hotel, but never observed him contact or talk with anyone while at the restaurant. Inquiries of neighborhood of Hotel del Comercio. T15, confidential source who has furnished reliable information in the past, advised that he has interviewed a large number of persons in the area of the Hotel de Comercio, among them car watchers, taxi drivers, restaurant operators, ambulatory salesmen, shoeshine boys, newspaper vendors, and others, displaying to them a photograph of Oswald. According to source, he had been unable to locate anyone who recalled Oswald. Interviews of guests at Hotel del Comercio. T2 and T13 advised that interviews of the following persons who were guests at the Hotel de Comercio during the same time period as Oswald had failed to identify anyone who was able to remember him. We have a bunch of names there, and sources advised that Guillermo Garcia Luna, owner of the Hotel de Comercio, had been able to furnish some identifying data concerning hotel guests Antonio Oliva, Fernando Valenzuela, Angelica Pereda, can't fucking read that, Pedro Quiana, Gabriel Contreras, Rodolfo Rodriguez, a bunch of Spanish names I'm not going to fucking sit here and read through. And efforts are being made to locate those individuals, as well as identify and locate others who were guests at the Hotel de Comercio during the same time as Oswald. Reputation of the Hotel de Comercio. On April 22nd, 64, an inquiry was made of Guillermo Garcia Luna by T13 as to his opinion of how Oswald had selected and appeared at his hotel. And he stated that even though the hotel is 3 blocks and around 3 corners from the Red Arrow bus terminal, he considers his hotel to have the best general aspect and appearance of any of the several in the neighborhood. Furthermore, it is known by personnel in other hotels that Garcia Luna can understand and speak a little English. He also mentioned that his hotel is filled to approximately 90% of capacity all the time because he makes every effort to provide superior accommodations to commercial travelers at competitive prices. On April 17, 64, T16, a confidential source who had furnished reliable information in the past and is in a position to be informed with respect to the activities in Mexico of Cubans and individuals of other nationalities who are sympathetic to the Castro revolutionary regime in Cuba, advised that the Hotel de Comercio is not known to him as being frequented by pro-Castro Cubans. On April 23, 64, T14, who is well acquainted with the hotel operations in Mexico City, reported that he knows nothing unfavorable with respect to the character and reputation of Guillermo Garcia Luna or the Hotel de Comercio, and considers the latter to be a reputable establishment, usually frequented by commercial travelers and individuals of modest means. Oswald's departure from Mexico. The information recorded below is made available by T17, confidential source abroad. The files of the Department of Immigration, Mexican Ministry of Gobernación, Interior or Government, reveal that Lee Harvey Oswald departed from Mexico on October 3rd, 63 at Nuevo Laredo. The records of Mexican Immigration Office at Nuevo Laredo reveal that on October 3rd, 63, from 12 midnight until 8 a.m., immigration official Alberto Arzamandi Chapa was in charge of the kilometer 26 highway checking station where tourist cards are picked up from aliens leaving Mexico by highway travel through Nuevo Laredo. An official of the Department of Immigration stated that the name and date stamp Arzamendi Chapa on the original tourist card surrendered by Oswald upon his departure from Mexico on that date were evidence of the fact that his exit from Mexico occurred during those hours. One thing we got to keep in mind, everybody, is that they fucking faked a lot of documents, right? So anything that we have where the original no longer exists, but we have a photocopy of it, is clearly a fake. And I don't know how much of this applies to, how much of this Mexico stuff this applies to. I know that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and we probably get to this here, but I'm under the impression that the bus ticket that he bought was dated on September the 29th. I didn't know you could buy a bus ticket for 4 days in advance, you know? So I'm kind of of the belief that some of that stuff was definitely faked. The official added that considerable investigation had been conducted by several different agencies of the Mexican government for the purpose of ascertaining subjects' method of travel on departure, and that in view of the fact the name Oswald had been located on a passenger list for the 1 p.m. trip out of the Transportes Frontera bus line from Mexico City to Nuevo Laredo, it was considered that Oswald had traveled thereon. Considerable investigation with respect to the passenger list mentioned above, including a check of the ticket stubs at Monterrey, Nuevo Leon headquarters of the company, interviews of bus drivers and passengers, and numerous interviews of employees of the Mexico City terminal of the bus line, failed to confirm that Oswald, in fact, had been a passenger on the Transportes Frontis bus in question. Let me read that again. I don't know if I'm stupid or I caught something. Sometimes there's no difference. Considerable investigation with respect to the passenger list mentioned above, including a check of the ticket stubs at the Monterrey Nuevo Leon headquarters of the company, interviews of bus drivers and passengers, and numerous interviews of employees of the Mexico City terminal of the bus line, failed to confirm that Oswald, in fact, had been a passenger on the Transportes Frontera bus in question. Let me screenshot that shit. Okay, that's going to be relevant at some point, I can tell. Interview of Herbert Robert Voorhees, passenger on Transporte del Norte bus traveling from San Luis Potosi to Nuevo Laredo on October 2nd to 3rd, 1963. T11 advised on March 26th, 1964, that Herbert Robert Voorhees, true name Herbert Francis Voorhees, who resides at Calle Maison number 19, apartment 10, San Miguel de Allende in Mexico, furnished the following. On October 2nd, 1963, he left San Miguel de Allende at 7:30 a.m. by a second-class yellow bus for San Luis Potosi, Mexico, where at about 2:40 p.m. on the same date, he departed for Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, via a Transportes del Norte bus. His bus arrived at Laredo, Texas, at approximately 2 a.m., October 3rd, and the following his going through his United States Customs and United States Immigration at Laredo, Texas, he disembarked from the bus in Laredo, rested at the Southland Hotel, thereafter proceeded to San Antonio, Texas via Greyhound bus. He was certain that the Transporte del Norte bus, while en route to Laredo, Texas, stopped in Mexico at about 1 a.m. on October 3rd, 1963, at the Mexican immigration check station about 12 miles from the Mexican-American border, where the lights were turned on and a Mexican immigration official boarded the bus to check each passenger's identification and travel documents. At this point, the Mexican immigration official ushered off the bus a young American whom he described as about 20 years of age, 5'9" tall, of medium build, clean-shaven, bare-headed, coatless, and cleanly attired in shirt, slacks, and shoes. The young American, who carried one small bag and had been sitting at the back of the bus. Upon his return to the bus, after apparently being questioned for a few minutes, he walked again to the back of the bus. As he passed Voorhees, he mumbled in good English and in a grumbling manner something like, "My papers were in order before. I don't know why they bother me now. They took my pass before." He clearly recalled seeing the American at the United States Customs check-in station in Laredo, Texas at about 1:30 a.m. on October 3rd, 1963, when a Mexican woman's luggage was being examined by the young American, was standing by. The American was trying to dispose of a banana by eating it hurriedly, gulping it down, and he was told by a customs officer that he could carry the banana into the United States and did not have to gulp it down so fast. He recalled talking with a Mexican-American man who sat across the aisle from him. This man was traveling with his wife and spoke English and Spanish. He could recall neither his name nor destination. No, I don't like that at all. Although, why am I pausing when I read the term Mexican-American? Throw it in the chat, somebody. he could recall neither his name nor his destination. He furnished as many other details about the above described trip as he could recall, and claimed he could not definitely state that the young American was identical with Oswald. However, he considered photographs of Oswald to be similar in every detail with the young American who was on the bus. So there we go again. Can't say it's him, but he's similar. Checks of records or other bus lines. T13 provided the following information. On March 30th, 1964, officials of the Autobuses Blancos Flecha Roja SA bus line made available passenger lists for the 4 scheduled trips of that company from Mexico City to Nuevo Laredo on October 2nd, 63, and no information identifiable with Oswald by any of the names he was known to have used was located on those lists. It was determined, however, that if the time schedules of that company are maintained, none of its trips to Nuevo Laredo would have arrived at the kilometer 26 highway checking station between midnight and 8 a.m. Mr. Ricardo Medina Beltran, manager of the Mexico City terminal of Autobuses Transporte del Norte bus line, hereinafter referred to as Transportes del Norte, advised that his company provided bus service between Mexico City, Mexico, and Laredo, Texas. He said that in connection with this service, a passenger list is normally prepared for each of the bus trips of his company between the above points. Medina explained that the passenger list actually is a card. Is a card form which reservations and ticket sales are recorded, and that after the particular trip for which it was prepared has left the terminal, it is canceled to avoid further confusion, as the reverse side of the form is utilized for a similar record at a later date. He stated that the canceled lists are not a pertinent record and are maintained only for a short period of time following their use. He stated that he had set aside the lists for early October 63 in the event that there should be further need for them. Nevertheless, he was unable to locate them. He pointed out that apparently they had been placed inadvertently in a storeroom where tires, spare parts, boxes of obsolete files, and records and other materials are maintained, and that only a thorough review of all material in the storeroom would reveal whether or not the list for October 2nd, 63 was still in existence. He related that his company has 2 direct trips daily to Nuevo Laredo and Laredo, Texas, and that the bus which departs from Mexico City at 8:30 a.m. is scheduled to arrive in Nuevo Laredo at 2 a.m., then following morning would arrive at the kilometer 26 checking station at approximately 1 a.m. All right, so it looks like we can get into the passenger list. Transporte del Norte passenger list for October 2nd on March 30th, 64. Mr. Medina advised that he had located the passenger reservations list for the 8:30 a.m. bus of October 2nd. And on the basis of consultation with him and several reservations and ticket clerks who recognized their handwriting thereon, the following data was obtained therefrom and translated from Spanish. All right, looking at this passenger list, do we have a Lee Harvey Oswald on here? Not yet. Doesn't seem to look like it. Does not seem to look like it at all. Does not seem to look like fucking Oswald's name is on this list, does it? Medina explained that seats number 12 and 15 had been reserved for another bus line or a travel agency, and that the company would have no record with respect to the identities of the occupants of those seats. On March 31st, 1964, Miss Rosa Maria Orozco, auditor of the Auto Viejas Internacionales SA travel agency, advised that she located a record of the sale by that firm of a ticket for travel on seat number 15 of the 8:30 a.m. October 2nd, 1963 bus of Transportes del Norte to Laredo to Anastasio Ruiz Mesa. She stated that the company had sold this transportation to Ruiz Mesa for travel to the Transportes del Norte bus line to Laredo and from Laredo to Chicago, Illinois by Greyhound bus line. All right, so what are we fucking talking about here? What is the deal? All right, so the bus that Oswald is supposed to have traveled out of Mexico City on, the one that's all credited is meeting up here in Nuevo Laredo, and it is in the history books as Oswald crossed the border. He's not on the fucking bus, okay? He's not on the fucking bus. Now, this might be where David Pierce Magyar comes into play. David Pierce Magyar is, if he didn't take a fucking bus, he had to get the fuck out of Dodge somehow, right? He might have just completely skipped over the fucking border entirely by hopping on a plane with David Pierce Magyar, right? I highly doubt Gaudet would have had anything to do with Oswald in Mexico City other than fucking get the visa at the same time to make sure he got there, right? But it's not Oswald, it's Kerry Thornley. So, what the fuck time is it? I'll get time. I'll keep going for a little bit longer. On April 1st, 64, Maclovio Portillo, superintendent of the Mexico City terminal of the bus line Transportes Chio, when's this? Motherfucking goddamn, I'm so glad I was born speaking English. Bernal Diaz, number 5, Mexico, and his clerk, Maria Teresa Casares, caused the records of that bus line to be searched for all tickets issued for travel on October 2nd, 63, in an effort to locate names Lee Harvey Oswald, O.H. Lee, Alec James Heidel, and V.L. Lee. I don't know what the fuck V.L. Lee is. V.T. Lee was the name of fucking Vincent T. Lee, the founder of Fair Play for Cuba Committee, as per the official story, but we know that's not true, right? So I don't know what the fuck V.L. Lee is. V.T. Lee was also an alias, I believe, was used by Arcacha at some point. Portillo advised that no information had been located which could be identified with the foregoing, explaining that tickets sold by his company during that period were in the 80 and 90,000 series, eliminating the possibility that ticket number 13688 might have been sold at that office. Oh, we got some fakeness going on here with tickets. That's interesting. Portillo suggested that the transportation concerning which inquiry was being made might have been sold at the Agencia de Viejas Transportes Chihuahua, with offices at Paseo de la Reform, number 52, room 5. He telephoned to the agency. Was advised by a clerk, Alejandrina M. de Butcher, that the reservation under number 13688 was available at the office. On April 1st, 64, Miss Teresa Schaefer Berquist, manager of the above-mentioned travel agency, located the reservation and purchase order number 13688, and it was determined to be in blank, never having been utilized. She reviewed the Transportes del Norte passenger list for bus number 332 for October 2nd, 63, considering that the order number might be 12688, and this order number was 12688, was located and also found to be blank. She insisted that her office had not handled the reservation noted on the Transporte del Norte passenger list shown to her October 2nd, 63. She was requested to review all reservation and purchase orders issued for October 63 by her office. A review of the carbon copies of these reservation and purchase orders was made by confidential source abroad in the presence of Miss Schaefer, which revealed that reservation and purchase order number 14618 was issued to Transporte del Norte in Mexico City for Mr. H.O. Lee. This is such bullshit. Okay, I just figured out what the fuck's going on here. Okay. So, Oswald is not alleged to have been to the boarding house until third week of October. And he allegedly stayed there like a whole bunch of days until November 22nd, right? That's completely false. Oswald never stayed at the boarding house. Kerry Thornley stayed at the boarding house. Now, that might be a justification for the use of the name Lee, like H.O. Lee, right? You see how it's H.O. could be Harvey Oswald Lee or Lee Harvey Oswald. You think it's just some rearrangement. But the problem that we've run into is that when you get to Mexico, this is all backdated, right? They faked the evidence and they backdated the shit, and then people went and investigated it, right? That's how this went. They fucking straight up manufactured this evidence. And for me, the proof of that is in the fact that at the boarding house was staying Herbert Leon Lee, right? In room O, right? Herbert Leon Lee, who's a real fucking person, stayed at the boarding house in room O. And I believe that it was purely opportunistic that they used Herbert Leon Lee's paperwork showing he was staying at the boarding house, right? So that's where the O.H. Lee comes from. Herbert Leon Lee in room O. That's where O.H. Lee comes from. Therefore, if you ever see the fucking name O.H. Lee pre-boarding house, you're talking backdating. It didn't happen in real time because they wouldn't have known about Herbert Leon Lee staying at the boarding house yet. Period. So all this shit is backdated. They did so much of this backdating and forging of stuff. I mean, like, they must have had a fucking dozen guys around the clock, 24 hours a day, faking fucking documents. There's a lawyer who's responsible for presenting most of the documents that were deemed, that I personally have deemed to be fucking frauds. And I can't remember that fucking lawyer's name. Guys in the chat, if you could fucking, in my research chat, if you could fucking try to track down the name of the lawyer who presented at least the the money order that was used for the rifle. If we can find out the lawyer's name who presented the money order for the rifle, which is clearly a fake, then we can link him to all the other fake evidence. And I promise you that fucking lawyer's name is going to be attached to all the documents that they're using to do all this investigation with, right? And here's April 1st, 64. They must have had this shit like ready to go right after the assassination. All right, so ridiculous that name would be used at all. And all right, this is where I'm going to call it for today, and I'll be back tomorrow. We've gone through about 15 pages, which is about 30 text pages. So that's going to be a good place to stop for today. We're going to pick up here tomorrow, and we're going to be on Mexico City for like another month. We've been on Mexico City for 2 months already, okay? This is the single most in-depth evaluation of Mexico City that any Kennedy researcher has ever fucking done, ever. And we're a long way from finished. We got at least 7 or 8 more people's testimony before the HSCA that we have to review. And then once we're done with all that, then we're going to take another fucking week to analyze it all. And so, yeah, we'll be on Mexico for a while longer because it's another one of these cruxes of the assassination that once you prove it was Kerry Thornley down there, then the whole fucking story falls apart, right? So, but that's it for today, guys. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't signed up for my Substack, please do. We just finished Mein Kampf. Today we did Black Nazis. And what are we doing? Tomorrow we're doing Theodore Herzl, and the Herzl Diaries. And yeah, and I got 50 books in. Okay, I have 50 print books in. They're soft cover. If you want a signed copy, they're $50 each, shipped within America. If you want it shipped anywhere outside of America, you can tack $30 onto that shit because y'all fucking exploit us through the fucking mail. It's disgusting what it costs to send a package to Australia. Holy fuck. So, all right, guys, I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks.